I'm Nina Sidell. Hello, good afternoon. We're here today talking about family relationships, specifically parenting, and within that, how to reduce the power struggle. So let me ask you, is your family of origin, was it, or your current nuclear family, like the Brady Bunch? Modern family, possibly? Or would it be more considered to be like the Titan Games or Survivor? Which one is everyone relating to, Survivor? Okay. So just to point out some common family issues that may bring on the possibility, the potential for power struggles, we are exploring a few areas that are common issues. There may be the combination and the pressure of raising children and balancing that with your own self-care. By the way, if you can relate, feel free to raise your hand, call, shout out, it's okay. So if you can relate, yeah, me too, I got that, I feel the same way. Challenging times. We live in a time in history that is wrought with insane chaos and unpredictability, lots of change, and the pressure of all that really impacts both parents and children of all ages. History, personal history, or personal unresolved trauma on the part of a parent can give the impetus for power struggles with their children that doesn't necessarily have to be acted out on. If someone is unresolved, they may be more easily triggered as the parent and therefore more reactive with their child and less clear. Work-life balance. How do you handle that when you get home after a long day of helping other people, a long day of doing the job that you feel is your mission to do, and then you go home and you have to do the same thing with those you love who depend upon you? How do you balance that and keep your sanity and keep your relationship healthy between yourself and your child or children? Incompatible parenting. Divorce rate, unfortunately, is very high, and even when parents are well suited, their parenting styles may not be. Therefore, there's a higher risk of power struggles not only between parent and child, but parent and parent. And the child will see that and learn that as well. Behavioral issues. Now, some people might say, yeah, my kids have issues. Well, excuse me. In my book, Parenting for Life, I talk about the fact that it's the combination of the two. It's the parent and the child. It's not specific to my kid has these issues. It's our family issues, it's the parents' issues, and it's the child's issues. And behavioral can be across the board, as I'm sure many of you know. Mental health and medical issues. Any kind of mental health challenges or medical problems cause increased stress and strain on a family. Anybody can relate to that in this room? Marital and relationship stress. That is absolutely, I see in my private practice people coming in who are looking to resolve power struggles with their children, and it turns out that they are not handling their marital issues, their possible separation and divorce very well, and therefore, again, they're more easily triggered by a child who either speaks up in a way that they don't understand or appreciate, or it reminds them of that person they're not relating well to, that other adult. In some cases as well, parents will see their child as a mini version of that other parent that they can't tolerate, and that's a problem. Financial stress, obviously that is an issue in many ways, and that does stem from what's happening outside, but it does impact the internal ability and coping mechanisms that the individual has, and I'm talking right now about the parent. If children know about financial stress, that also can make them stressed out as well, or marital stress. And then the last common issue would be communication breakdown. So if, let's say, a power struggle does begin between a parent and a child, and we'll go through this again in a little bit, it is incredibly difficult to stop it once it starts. Can anybody relate to that? So, and I'll repeat this throughout this program, that it's always better to initiate steps to avoid a power struggle than to fix it. it could go on for years, I'm sorry to say, otherwise. Now this is a fun thing. This is your parenting styles and goals. Often when we become parents, we're not taught, what's our style? What was the style that our parents raised us? What are our goals? And the goals can include what we want for our children. We want them to grow up happy and healthy and successful and feeling good about themselves. And sometimes we forget about a goal that we get along, that we have a really strong and empowered and positive lifetime relationship. To me, that's a very important goal. So let's talk about, and also your parenting goals can include your goals. If you were not parented in a way that you felt comfortable with, or satisfied with, or hurt by, it could be recreated very easily if the parent doesn't take a look at that and resolve it, so that they're clear about what are their goals with their children. And the last goal, before we talk about the style, is related to the legacy that we leave when we're no longer with our children. So that's something that I like to talk to people about regarding being in the moment, being present in each interaction, and in each interaction stretching your mind and your heart a little to say, gee, I wonder how this moment will impact the future of our relationship and my child's future later. Legacy. Pretty interesting. Parenting is hard work. So here are some of the parenting styles. The authoritarian is the dictator. That's the taskmaster. I told you to do that. Why, mommy or daddy? Because I said so. Anybody raised like that?
Oh yeah.
That's considered old school, actually, at this time. Not my favorite form. And the disciplinary mode with authoritarian parenting is very punitive, it's very negative. Consequences are always negative, always. Things are taken away, the parent is right and the child is wrong. Again, not my favorite. The next one is not only my favorite, I wrote about it in Parenting for Life. That's the authoritative, that's the democratic style. That's where the parent knows that they're a guide, they're a role model to their child. They're not the taskmaster. They're in a position to teach, lead, guide, role model with love and boundaries, so that the child is always feeling that they have a voice. And the way I term it is parents in charge, children have a voice. And in that style, the lifetime relationship between parent and child is almost guaranteed to be successful over time, because there's a dialogue built in, and there's also mutual respect, and the hierarchy is very clear. I am in charge, and yes, honey, you have a voice. Permissive is the role reverse style. That is when a parent is a passive friend to their child. That's kind of where, anybody can relate to that kind of parenting? That's where you see children setting the standard for the family, creating the mood of the family. The parent sort of role reverses into the child position, and the child kind of takes over the parent's position. And it doesn't help the child, because children need boundaries and structure. They need leadership. We all need leadership. And as children are developing, they have to know that someone's got their back, someone's leading them somewhere as they're finding themselves. So it really doesn't work. It backfires often. The absent style is the uninvolved deadbeat. That's someone who is really not invested. And coming, again, from a psychological point of view, they don't know how to parent. They most likely were not parented well, and they may have been abandoned themselves. So it's very common for people to replicate the way they were parented. Most of the time, people replicate, or they run, can I say hell? Like hell, in the exact opposite direction from the way they were parented. Just curious, how many people here feel like they're parenting or have been a parent the way they were parented? Okay, how many people here feel that they have parented or are parenting in the exact opposite way than the way they were parented? Okay, I'd say the second one had more hands up. So that says a lot, that speaks a lot to evolution. And keep in mind that Every generation's job is to be better than the one that came before it, which is a whole other discussion, because we can discuss what does that even mean, and who's to judge. So you can see it in a holistic and a developmental way, where in order to allow your child to be better, quote unquote, than you, they're thriving. They're more of themselves. They feel more at home in themselves and in the world. They may be more successful than you. It's okay. It's our job to train them to be their best. So let's take a look. I have a chapter in my book about this. Create sanctuary in your home. This has 4 different areas that I like to call upon. The first is the facet of home being a safe harbor, that it's a sacred space. So let's say you have a hectic day at work, you come home, you're stressed out, you can't hear anything, you don't want to tolerate any adversary or hostility or too many questions launched at you. Maybe you don't have a lot to give at the end of a long day. Well, even still, it's very important, because it's the parent's responsibility to take great care of the child that needs them, is you want to always infuse in everything you do unconditional love. Now, I personally, and in my work as a psychotherapist, I also include unconditional respect and support, because that includes acceptance. You might love your child who tells you that they have an alternative lifestyle, for example. Well, you still have to support them, right? Even if you don't understand it or you don't agree. That's safety. Mutual respect, nurturance is important. So you have that really tough day, you come home, both of you need to be nurtured in some way. And remember that when you're nurturing yourself and your child watches that, that's fantastic. You're setting a beautiful example as their role model. How do I handle when I'm under great stress? What do I do to calm myself down and self-soothe? Freedom of acceptance, freedom of expression is also important. A lot of times parents get very reactive when their child expresses themselves. And I often say, you want that. Better that your child feels safe enough to tell you anything, to be messy, to be a little loud, to not be polite every moment, because that's who they are in that moment. If there's a line being crossed, in terms of disrespect, obviously you have to set limits. That's also something children need as well. And in your home environment, for a safe place, obviously you have to set those limits around that as well. The family team and a sense of belonging is part of that safety, that every person in the family knows they are important. Every single person. And in some cases, they include the dog and the cat. That it's a family, so everyone there knows they matter. Building safety and trust. Again, that's a safe place. So that can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. It might mean that your child knowing their personality developmentally, maybe they're a quiet person, maybe they're an introvert. Maybe, and for an introvert, they need to have quiet time to self-soothe and to rebound and to recharge themselves. And for them, they may need a parent that says, okay, honey, go ahead and take your space, or go play, a game or whatnot for a little bit, and then we'll talk when you feel calmer. And adults need that too. Mistakes are okay. We're human. We make mistakes. Clear limits. Clear limits are boundaries that need to be set up from pretty young. As children get bigger, the limits change. Because why? Because as children develop and evolve, they need some freedom and self-expression, not just boundary, boundary, boundary. Labeling is not something I'm big on. Sometimes I hear parents insult their children with a label, thinking that they're telling the truth. And to me, that's very disrespectful. And more importantly, that's really not understanding who your child is in a positive way. So it's all about reframing. So let's say a child has ADD and is hyperactive, and yet they're bubbly and full of life and joy. So that parent has a decision to make, whether they're talking to the child, the spouse, another one of their kids, a stranger, whomever, a friend, my kid's hyper, my kid's a ball of energy, I can't control my child. Or, my child is so full of joy, my child is so wonderfully loving and expressive. So that's a shift that you reframe for the benefit of your child's self-worth. A whole other talk. Self-worth is so important. We don't talk about it a lot. We talk about self-esteem. Individuality, balancing structure and freedom. Being accountable is a really important thing for everybody in the family, which we'll talk about in a little while as well. Listening well. Anyone here know about active listening? A little bit? Okay, so active listening, and again, because of time, I don't want to veer too much. Active listening is when the listener feels completely heard, because the speaker, feels completely heard, because the listener is feeding back to them what they thought they heard them say. And then they validate it. Is that what you meant? No, Mommy, I didn't mean that. Okay, honey, say it again. Let me hear you better. And again, if the parent's stressed out or going through any of those conflicts and issues from earlier, choose a time that you can be fully present so that you can really hear as best as possible. Model respect. Dependency and interdependency create sanctuary, because what you're doing is you're setting up a situation and a dynamic between you and your child or children that they know you've got their back. They know that you are a trusted, consistent person to care for them, and to care about them. The child's development. A lot of times parents don't understand child development. Anybody understand what I'm saying when you work with people that don't realize the importance of that? It's very individualized. Not every child grows and develops at the same rate in so many arenas, and that's okay. And sometimes parents also take it personally if their child isn't developing like their peers or the other children in the family. Adult issues need to be separated from what's going on with children. Children can't generally handle adult issues. If it becomes a pattern, the adult needs to get help for that. And relationship boundaries. So relationship boundaries speak to, I'm not going to curse you out, you're not going to curse me out, as an example. When I say something, I appreciate you respecting that, and that, again, that's both ways. Family wellness means growing strong relationships. The goal is autonomy. The goal is independence. The goal is some interdependence as your children get older and you get older, but it's not dependence after they're young. And that's also very empowering for the child, by the way, to know that you want them to grow up and be free and strong and have roots into their family of origin, but also know they can reach out into the world and be themselves and be proud of who they are. Peaceful, loving, relaxed environment is a great goal, and if you find that you're not creating that, then you need to take space and get some support so that you do go back to that. So what is a power struggle? A power struggle is a conflict or battle or of control or will designed to get one's way. It usually shows up during decision-making times. We're not always conscious of what's happening in the moment. It's like a car accident. It happens so fast. Next thing we know, we're on the other side of the road, and there's a car next to our car, and the police are there. What happened? So a power struggle is really important and key that the parent is alert to whether it's a decision-making time, a stressful time in that moment, or a transitional time. And a lot of children have issues transitioning from one activity to another, including bedtime, mealtime, doing homework from school. So that's a really important baseline to remember. The thing with a power struggle, it creates a winner and a loser. It's not a negotiation. It's not honoring each person. It creates stress, distance, escalation, shuts down communication, and it invariably is a power play between two people. Doesn't matter the age or the relationship dynamic, it is a power play. It begins a negative relationship pattern, and I'm sorry to tell you, it takes years to resolve it. So if you can avoid a power struggle in those difficult moments, go for it. Because if not, you're going to have that interaction and that dynamic most likely last between you and that child. It's easier to avoid than fix. And it's the parent's responsibility, in my opinion. So part A, I'm going to rush through because of time a little here, is self-awareness. Now, again, I said earlier, I'm not saying it's the kid's fault. They're acting out. They're so difficult. How dare they speak to me that way? I'm saying it's between the parent and the child. So the parent has the onus of saying, what was my part in that power struggle? And be humbled. And then the child, again, as a role model example, will say, gee, I'm going to learn to take responsibility for myself. What was my responsibility in that? So it's really important to be mindful during those times I mentioned, decision-making, stressful, and transitional times. Look, at the end of the night, you're trying to get your child to go to bed by 9 p.m., and they're not ready, and you are because you're so tired. And maybe there is a little wiggle room, even though you want that limit of 9 p.m. as the bedtime. That's a great moment to really interact in a very meaningful and soft, loving way with that child, to help them calm down, to help them feel that connection with you. Maybe some loving touches they might need. Maybe they had a trouble during the day at school. Someone's picking on them and they're trying to relax and they can't because it's bothering them. So they need that active listening and that loving support, that unconditional love, acceptance, and support from you. Assess the importance of the conflict, request, or misbehavior of your child or yourself. Own your reactions and your power to self-control. Fabulous skill as a parent. Fabulous skill as a politician, just saying. Self-control is a big deal. Create peace in your lifetime relationship is the goal. And that you're solution-oriented as opposed to needing to be right is the other goal. Second part is interpersonal awareness. That means what's happening between the two of you. You're actively listening, not just to the words. You're not just hearing with your ears. You're listening and observing behavior. You're listening with your heart. You're feeling. If your child's having a problem because of, let's say it's a stressful moment, and you don't know that they're in stress, observe their behavior. Young children show us how they feel. They don't have the words. Oh, by the way, same with teenagers. They show us, they don't tell us. And developmentally, toddlers and teenagers have the same developmental goals. So you go through it twice. Yay! But you get your skills down, it's okay. And the relationship gets built up over this time frame. Be empathetic. Involve your child in the process. So for much younger children, give them a choice. Okay, sweetie, would you rather do your homework when you get home from school or after dinner? I don't know, Mommy. Okay, you pick. Oh, wow, I feel powerful. Okay, how about after dinner? You got it, sweetheart. Do your homework after dinner. Respect your child's point of view and their desire for power. If a child is stripped of their need and want to be seen, heard, and understood, they will feel powerless and they will act out. And by the way, this is another funny irony. When children act out at home, it's normal, expected, it's okay. It's our job to deal with it. When children act out in the world, then it's a behavioral problem. So the preference is that they act out with you. Let's see, you want to find solutions for peace and avoid shaming at all costs. Learning and loving about your child as a unique, growing individual. And they will thank you for it as time goes on. They'll remember that you acknowledge them as an individual person. So here's some action steps for conscious parenting to avoid or stop a power struggle. So whether it's morning, bedtime, homework, or mealtime, always remember to let the love shine through. It's one of my expressions, I love that. Because it's almost like a visual. You can imagine the sun and the heart with rays coming from it, and that a child really needs that love consistently, not conditionally. Remember that there are some rules at home, and that you build in rewards. I think the consequences ought to be positive more than negative. And a lot of parents immediately think of the negative consequence. This is a negative consequence for you. You messed up. Instead of, hey, you did a great job with that. I am super impressed with your honesty. What would you like? Let's do something together. What would you like to do? That's a positive consequence. That was so sweet of you, the way you talked to your brother. Wow, honey, what do you want to do as a family? Would you like to pick what we do for family time this week? That's a reward for a value that you want to grow in your child and a behavior that you appreciate. So the idea is always to de-escalate the conflict, which is also great in adult relationships if you can learn how to do that, using open dialogue. Younger children give choices. Older children, middle school and up, have them involved in the consequence. Okay, kiddo, you came home late again, or we talked about it repeatedly. It's a school night. I know you're having fun with the video club at school, with that club, and then you went out after, and then you stayed at your friend's house. But honey, you're really late. You're late. We talked about this. So, I'm not mad at you. I just want you to realize that your word is important to me, and that I can count on you and you can count on me. So, what do you think a consequence could be for you? I don't know. What do you think, Mom? I don't know. Think about it. What do you think would be an appropriate consequence? And you can say, it doesn't have to be that I take something from you or that you feel shamed. It can be, I guess next time I'm going to realize that I'll let you know if I'm running late. Okay. And in addition, I'm going to remind you. How's that? Okay, we're good. All right. And if you get triggered as a parent, it's very important to get support, whether it's psychotherapy, parenting coaching, because that's your responsibility. So, one of my slogans is parents in charge, children have a voice. The goal is cooperation. Communication is the language of the heart. If you keep that in mind, and you relate that way to your children of all ages, they'll feel it. They'll believe you. They'll know that's true. You'll be able to have a more cooperative household. Find your inner calm so that home is a safe place for everyone. So if you need to meditate, you need to run around the block, you need to scream in your pillow, you need to go dancing on the weekend, do it. Do what you need to do to keep yourself in check and to feel calm internally. Children pick up on everything. And you're a better parent when you're a calmer parent. Building your parenting skills is key because it's the hardest job you'll ever love. So take responsibility for what you create in your home and in your relationship with your child. Your history running in the background impacts your attitude, expectations, and behavior. Your parenting style and parenting goals comprise your overall parenting purpose. Take time to honestly reflect. Children are our future. Support expression and teamwork, because self-worth is at the key of everything, in my opinion. How people feel about themselves. Family is at the core, and everybody's story, after all, begins at home, right? And the chance to love is present in every type of family, whatever configuration it might be. And every person in that family matters. So learn as you go, knowing that you all evolve, and knowing that this is a lifetime relationship. It's not a relationship for a season. Parent-child relationship is ongoing, and it affects future generations, of course. And thank you.